Welcome to Animaznalysis, the show where I attempt to look at a game critically, see what may be wrong with it, and offer up suggestions on how to make it better. As many of you know, the new Star Wars Battlefront is going to be released soon, probably in a few hours. Many gamers, such as myself, have had time to play the beta and see what it's going to be about. I've been a fan of Star Wars Battlefront since the very first one I played on PlayStation 2. I love the second one even more, being able to play with my little brother for hundreds of hours. I've also played thousands of hours worth of Battlefield series, which is relevant to this video because DICE is the team that developed this new Star Wars Battlefront. I'm going to cover a little bit of what makes the game in general great, and then apply it to the upcoming Star Wars Battlefront. For this video, we're going to assume that the gameplay from the beta will be very similar, if not the exact same, from the complete game. This is a video on how to fix your dang game. Before we get into the meat of the topic, I want to talk about video games in general and what makes them interesting or fun to play. Many games out there exist, some fun, some not so much. And there's plenty of reasons why those games are fun. One thing that I want to focus on is complexity and strategy of a game. For example, a maze is pretty boring if all you have is straight away from start to finish, or maybe just a maze that really only has one path to follow. On the other hand, people may not even want to attempt a maze that's overly complex. But when a maze is just right, where you attempt it and finish it, and it's kind of difficult, you get this nice sense of accomplishment. How weird would it be if there was a maze that if you just sat there, it got easier over time? Or maybe if you kept bumping into a wall, eventually the wall would disintegrate and you'd have a new path. Seems a little silly, and you might be wondering what that has to do with video games. Many of today's games do that. When I was younger, I played Need for Speed Underground 2. I like this game a lot because when you win, you get money, and you use that money to buy parts or customize your car. Really a nice racing RPG. The more you play the game, the more money you get, whether you win or lose. The more money you get, the better the parts you can buy. The progression was linear. You just make enough money to get to the next part, make your car the better car. This allows you to be a bit lazier because your car starts outperforming the other cars. Compare this game to a racing simulator like Grid Autosport. I played this game and got frustrated. After competing in a race, you get money based on how well you do. This money isn't used to tune up your cars, but instead lets you unlock other cars that have different types of performance. In Grid Autosport, there actually is the whole thing of the more you play, the better the car you can afford. But for Grid, if you use a more expensive car, you better come up first because not doing so creates a net loss for you. You lose money, more than you may have if you use a cheaper car. In Grid Autosport, it tries to make you gain skill as a player before it allows you to use something else more powerful. Project Cars also takes the same idea by allowing all of the cars to be available to you at once, instead of having to grind for the best parts and best gear, like Need for Speed Underground 2. Grid and Project Cars makes you a better racer instead of allowing you to be a lazier racer. Now, let's look at some shooters that do this. Two of the biggest shooter series are Call of Duty and Battlefield. These games are more similar to Need for Speed Underground 2 than Grid Autosport. The more you play them, the more guns with better stats are available to you. You have more gadgets available to you. There's more things you can do overall. Imagine this. You're coming around a corner and there's an enemy waiting for you. For most games in most cases, with the basic weapons, if you just straight up run around that corner, you would get mowed down. Now, if you've been playing for a while, you might have a nice gun available to you. This gun lets you run around the corner and take down the enemy before he can get a shot off on you. This is the case of the game letting you be lazier because you've been playing it for a while. If the shooter we were talking about instead were Counter-Strike, you'd die almost every time. Instead, after a while, you might try to learn how to cut the pie, or maybe learn a different cornering technique altogether rather than run and gun. That's a case of the game trying to make you better. Sure, there are cases of this happening in COD and BF, but it's not as ruthless and punishing as CS. Also, maybe the fact that in CS people can scream at you for playing stupidly might have something to do with it. Who knows? The bottom line is, these shooters are letting you be lazy instead of being skilled. If I give you a pistol, and I have the exact same pistol, and you kill me, I can't complain about anything besides my lack of skill compared to yours. I can't say your bullets travel faster, I can't say I have to deal with more recoil, I can't say that you have a perk that lets you regen health at a higher speed than me. No, straight up, the only difference between us would be our skill levels. If I have a better gun and start killing you more, that doesn't mean I've become a better player. It just means now I have a better gun. And how fun is that? But why did I have fun playing Need for Speed Underground 2? I actually would like to attribute it to the customizability in the game. Having the ability of choice and creativity. Life would be pretty boring if the whole path were laid out for us, and all we did was live through it. might as well be reading a book, and we all know how boring books are. But being able to pick your own path makes it feel like you're creating it. You're actually doing something versus being taken for a ride. Now, there is merit in this, and we'll definitely discuss it more later. Let's actually talk about some game aspects between Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, and then compare them to its remake. Star Wars Battlefront brings the militaristic firefight action of the Star Wars universe to you. You get to play as a soldier from the prequel trilogy, either Galactic Republic or the CIS, or you can play as a soldier from the classic trilogy, the Rebels or the Empire. Each military has 5 classes: Basic Infantry, Heavy Weapons Unit, Engineer, Sniper, and a unit that is special to each faction. The Galactic Republic features a jetpack trooper that can climb low but long distances. The CIS features the iconic Droideka, having a speedball mode and a deployable energy shield. The Rebels feature Wookiee, tanky, with a bowcaster, and the Empire has a Dark Trooper, which can jump for short bursts but has a lot of vertical reach. The game also features heroes for each faction that come out depending on what game mode you're playing. Depending on your faction, you could have Mace Windu, Count Dooku, Luke Skywalker, or Darth Vader. Players can also have access to vehicles depending on which map they're playing on. Most game modes are played as Conquest style. Each team has units that get used after a respawn, and can try to capture CPs or control points to dwindle down the enemy's units faster over a period of time. The more CPs controlled, the faster the enemy team's units will diminish. Maps also featured iconic areas such as Hoth, Endor, the Death Star, and Kashyyyk. This game features 2 campaigns in Galactic Conquest. The first campaign is for Clone Wars, where you get to do a series of missions that help reflect the series of events that took place during the prequel series. The second campaign follows Galactic Civil War, following the events that took place in the classic series. There's also a Galactic Conquest mode where you can choose a faction and try taking over planets. Taking over a planet will give your faction a buff to be used in-game, such as vehicle regeneration over time, vehicular sabotage for the enemy, more units to fight with, and instant hero use. I felt like this game did a good job, offered a lot of varied gameplay, and brought you to places where Star Wars fanatics can fanboy over. Maps were all different and unique, and offered utility for each unit, and bans for others. For example, playing as Droideka on Cloud City was cool because it was easy to roll around and get to where you needed to quickly. There were tons of flat surfaces. The jetpackers could also get from section to section, where regular foot soldiers couldn't because they'd fall to their death. Kashyyyk offered a sniper's paradise, with high platforms and a dead zone right in the middle for any soldier stupid enough to walk through it. Again, the maps and class selection went well. For me, having varied classes made this game tons more fun. You had to have played it like a chess match. For example, you see the enemy team is using tons of foot soldiers. Maybe you should pull out a few snipers to kill them from afar. Or, the enemy team is choking a point with an ATST or a CIS tank. Then pull out a heavy trooper to take it down. There was a time and place to utilize the units given to you. You could strategize. That's what made this game fun, along with being able to shoot a Wookiee in the face, or see Mace Windu take down some Droideka. Star Wars Battlefront 2 arrives 2 years later with improved graphics and additions to the game that the predecessor did not have. Better AI, better campaign mode, space battles, more maps, playable heroes, new classes, vehicle hijacking, sprintability, skill rewards, and being able to switch classes at CPs. Also some new game modes. The new campaign mode follows the Legion of the 501st, or Vader's Fist. I loved the narration for this, letting you see firsthand how clones came to be. It also allowed for more story-oriented missions, letting you follow Aayla Secura on the flowery planet of Felucia, showing you the battle played out on Maigito with Ki-Adi-Mundi, and then listening to their logs about having to kill the Jedi that worked alongside them and possibly saved their lives. It shows their progression from the Clone War era to the Galactic Civil War era, and the rise of the Empire. It's almost as interesting as a book. Space battles were created. They allow you to play as an engineer or space marine. You can fly through your capital ship and start attacking the enemy ship. Either damage outside parts of the enemy ship, or try to infiltrate and destroy it from the inside out. Gameplay was so enhanced by being able to use certain ships as spawn points, letting your team really do some damage inside of the enemy's capital ship. This was definitely one of my favorite parts of the game. The game has playable heroes under certain circumstances, such as Windu, Han Solo, Boba Fett, and Palpatine. Instead of having a regular health bar, these heroes have a large health bar that diminishes over time, but replenishes for every kill. As long as you're in a killing spree, you can keep using the hero. The one problem I have with this is that in most ways this is implemented, the option to choose the hero is given to the player who's already performing the best. That's like giving the best racer a car from the future with specs that are higher than anything the other guys have. That doesn't make too much sense. Sure, I get it as a reward for having that skill in the first place, but I'm not too sure if this is the right way of going about it. Maybe allow for the person who's doing the worst on your team to be able to play a hero. That certainly is an option in instant action mode. It is fun to play as heroes though, being able to traverse the battlefield faster and kill multiple enemies easily. I guess that would be really well implemented for the players who are doing worse, to give them a sort of crutch. Some of the new classes also allow for interesting game mechanics. You have the IGs, now on the droid side, which almost were as agile as Jedi. Clone commanders for the Galactic Republic, which have flak machine guns. Stealth bowhand spies for the rebels, and ARC troopers for the Empire. These new units are nice additions because while adding the new unit, they don't disrupt the balance that was already set in the previous game, and instead serve to enhance it. They create different interactions as well. Allowing a player to switch classes at CP was a pretty nifty idea. I definitely utilized it, but I'm not sure how often others did. What it does is allow players to be more fluid throughout the battle, instead of having them play a certain class until death or respawn. Making your way through a narrow hallway as a regular infantry unit, that hallway leads to a nice balcony. Then you can switch to a sniper unit and a CP. On one hand, this allows the player to be more of a one-man army type of guy, but it really is hard to utilize it to that extent. I believe this addition doesn't take too much away from the idea that players will try to specialize or pick classes when they respawn to fit the scenario. Skill rewards are offered for players who achieve certain feats throughout the game. There's a marksman achievement that allows you to use much more powerful sniper rifle after getting a certain amount of headshots. There's an improved blaster rifle that you can obtain after a certain amount of kills. These achievements are active throughout the whole round, if you initiate them in time. In terms of balance, it also reminds me of heroes available to the player who does the best. But these seem to be a little bit more balanced because even though they are improved, so are their drawbacks, meaning there's more to it. For instance, the improved sniper rifle will definitely do more damage, but have more cooldown between the shots. The improved blaster rifle will shoot 3 rounds in bursts, no matter what. This makes the player need to adapt to their new weapon. I think overall, this wasn't that bad of an addition. The new game modes added were Hunter, Capture the Flag, and Hero Assault. I feel like these were interesting ideas, but not many people played them, save Hero Assault. Overall, I say that Star Wars Battlefront 2 did a great job as a sequel, and is a pretty solid game. It showed us some new material and enhanced on what was possibly lacking in the original. It built upon the idea of classes, allowed for more fluidity, and helped build some more immersion and told a better story. And all in all, it didn't create too much of a mess, even though it's starting to reward more skilled players for being skilled. Now, to move on to the new Star Wars Battlefront. I've had some time to play the newest Star Wars Battlefront from the beta. First thing I noticed when I jumped right into the game, no classes. After seeing this, my heart sank immediately. This is one of the things that sets Battlefront series apart from the others. The previous Battlefronts had the class systems and it did pretty well with them. As mentioned before, the class system allows for players to play more strategically. It makes them think about building off strengths and weaknesses. Because there were no class systems in the battlefield, it felt very disorganized. Everybody had a blaster rifle and a sniper most of the time. I'd either do all the damage sniping and blasting, or get sniped across from all angles, especially on the Hoth map. If everybody wanted to, they could have a jetpack or an invincibility shield. Sure, doing this gives players more ability to customize their class and create their own type of soldier. But to me, this shows a lack of militaristic appeal. It shows mess. It makes me feel unengaged as a player. When your role is so malleable, it makes you more likely to go out there and do stupid stuff. When you're a foot soldier, you push the hard points. When you're a sniper, you lay low in the back and pick off people that may cause harm to your team. When you're an engineer, you buff vehicles and disarm enemy ones. When you have a little bit of everything, you do everything.
Your main objective, troops, is to do all the things, but mostly the killing ones. Don't worry about playing any objectives, just kill things. Eventually, you'll do fine. Maybe.
It creates less of a need for purpose, kind of like being given every tool an artist could have. A paintbrush, a pencil, a calligraphy brush, some macaroni, and sand, then being given a piece of blank paper. What do you do with that? This also leads to more players going off as lone commando wolves. They're going to try to do it all, and probably not contribute too much to the team as a whole. I talked a little bit about objective gameplay, and as a Battlefield fan, I'm all about PTFOing, playing that freaking objective. For the Hoth mission at least, the objective was pretty clear, but the delivery of it, not so much. How come the rebels are only allowed to take down the AT-ATs at designated intervals? Why are those intervals only determined by how many Y-Wings are able to bomb them? And what the heck is up with us not being able to use the snow speeders plus cables all the time? I loved Hoth on Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 because it felt like it required more teamwork. Assault mode was cool. You had to get AT-ATs toward the shield generators to open up the rebels' base, but the rebels could counteract the AT-ATs with snow speeders at any time. It was more fluid, flowed better, and the way the new Battlefront dealt it out for Hoth felt very segmented and forced. If you notice in the video right here, the objective says to activate the uplinks, and now it says activate both uplinks. And I have 3 Y-Wings and 2 walkers to destroy. Now the Y-Wings are incoming. What am I waiting for? I feel like instead it would make a lot more sense if you could actually pilot a Y-Wing to use the bombs to destroy the shields on the walker. Then allow for your team to fly in snow speeders after that, instead of having to rely on these waves that come after certain time intervals. I talked a little bit about snow speeders, which makes me want to talk about vehicles in DICE's Battlefront. You run around the Battlefront picking up an item, and then you can use that item to call a vehicle. What? Seriously? What? There is so much lack of immersion from that, and discontinuity as well. A few seconds ago, you were trying to dodge blaster fire. Now you're flying in the sky, shooting lasers across the map. You don't just call in a vehicle and instantly teleport to it. Getting into a vehicle should be as simple as walking to it and climbing inside. This is the same thing you need to do in the regular Battlefield system. It's even been the same for the previous 2 Battlefronts. What did DICE do here and why? I guess this alleviates the need for vehicles to spawn. They just kind of appear out of thin air. I feel like there's a lot more going for the game when they let you climb into vehicles. For immersion, it makes more sense. Make sure vehicles are enterable. Something that DICE added was currency system for unlocks. Here's a basic overview of what I witnessed. The more you play, the more currency you get. The more EXP you get too. The higher level you are, the more possible unlocks. You also use currency to purchase those unlocks. Of course, the better you do, the more of each you get. But even if you suck, you're still going to get currency and EXP. Does this sound familiar? It should. This is what I was talking about 5 minutes to explain at the beginning of the whole video. This type of system makes players lazy. It does not foster skill. It makes the game feel more boring and repetitive. At least with a system implemented in Battlefield 4, you needed to keep using the same weapon over and over to progress with it, making you learn better how the weapon interacts. The original Star Wars Battlefronts didn't even have such a system. DICE, please get rid of this system. If you want to reward players for playing longer, give them something like customizable skins or logos. Rocket League does this perfectly. You could even try something as weird as Dota 2, where cosmetics can be made by the fans. I'm sure you'll increase your user base if you have something like that. But that's dreaming big. Another thing that saddens me about the game was lack of single-player campaign. Maybe people don't like the single-player campaign, but I certainly did, and I know a few friends who were disappointed that there's nothing like that for us. But the idea of trying to make up for it with defeat multiple waves kind of deal leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Are you trying to make this Call of Duty with stormtroopers instead of zombies? Because if so, you're doing a great job. Still, I can't complain too much about this, I guess. It's better than not putting in anything at all. Please, add some type of narrative story player. Just do better than Titanfall's narrative at least, if you remember that there was. I know I've been bashing on the new game so much. There should be at least one thing they did right? Well, the only thing I really approved of was the way heroes are deployed in this title. Like the vehicles, they're pickups. That's more balanced than letting the player who's doing the best get access to the hero. They still function overall the same as they did in the second Star Wars Battlefront. In my opinion, this choice creates a lot more balance. Although, if they had a conquest mode and wanted to still implement heroes, I think it'd be more balanced to let only heroes be available if a team has less than a quarter of the CPs. It'll create a kind of catch-up motion for the team that's losing, giving the winning team something more interesting to deal with. I think that'd make the game a lot more fun, more balanced as well, if there is a conquest mode. I gotta tell you guys, part of making this video was just laying out my disappointments. I thought the game would be great. I love the Star Wars Battlefront series, I'm a huge fan of Battlefield, just check my hours. So naturally, when I heard that DICE was making Star Wars Battlefront, my hopes shot up. After playing the beta, expectations crashed. I wonder what happened. I read somewhere along the line, DICE does not want to make Star Wars Battlefront feel like other shooters, and that it aims to make a Battlefront series on its own. They said that people don't want Battlefield with Star Wars graphics. When I read this, I could see where they're coming from. They don't want to cop out and just produce something that they've done just by putting a new paint job on it. I understand that, but they're too afraid of doing something that works well because it's something that they've already done. Pretty sure people would not lose their minds if DICE kept the class system. Players would be like, oh, that's something from Battlefield series. DICE is just being lazy. I don't think people think that at all. And because DICE was scared of doing that, instead of making a shooter that's Battlefield with Star Wars graphics slapped on, they've made a generic shooter with Star Wars graphics slapped on. This is worse than Call of Universe Galactic Offense 3 Revenge of the Producers. There was so much potential with DICE developing this game. I honestly would have been happiest if they made Battlefield with Star Wars graphics. Also, take away gun customization. Maybe add some content that will represent the upcoming movie. Bam! Instant success. You get all the people who love the Battlefield series, along with people who love the Star Wars in general. Now, here's my crazy conspiracy theory. Battlefield 3 had an Easter egg in Back to Karkand. On this expansion, one of the maps had various crates labeled 2143. If you don't know, 2142 is Battlefield's futuristic military shooter. 2143 suggests that it is going to be a sequel to the successful futuristic shooter. If DICE is currently working on this game, they could potentially be withholding possible ideas for Star Wars Battlefront and implementing them on their futuristic shooter instead. This is a long stretch and just a theory I have. Don't know how much of it to believe, but it's the only thing that can somewhat comfort me from the huge disappointment I got when playing the newest Star Wars Battlefront. Yep. DICE is saving all the good stuff for its own baby and not something it adopted from a random dying stranger. Again, all of these are just opinions that came about from witnessing the beta, and maybe the actual game will prove to be better than that. I can only hope so. Unfortunately, this video came out late. The game has already been released. Whatever DICE has set out is set in stone. I'm sure there are already tons of other review videos, maybe some saying what I have and others praising it. Make sure you hear both sides of the story to stay informed. The video is long and I apologize for that. I just had so much hope for this game. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for whatever I decide to do next.